So today we're going to talk about instrument panel clusters. So instrument panel clusters, or IPC, you guys are going to learn that, I say this all the time, technicians, we abbreviate everything. We use acronyms for everything. If I gave you a book, one of our textbooks, and you look in the back of the page for acronyms, there's pages and pages of acronyms. ECM, TCM, PCM. Those are short for engine control module, body control module, transmission control module, powertrain control module. IPC is short for instrument panel cluster. ABS, anti-lock brakes. We abbreviate everything. We use acronyms for everything because it's quicker and it's kind of industry terminology. When we're writing things down, remember, we learned how to do repair orders briefly, and you're going to practice those too. But documenting everything is important, but you also don't have to write a novel when you're documenting. So you're going to find out technicians use a lot of acronyms because we can say technician checks IPC indicators. Well, that just saved me time and space on my paper from having to write instrument panel cluster. And everybody in industry knows what some of these key terms are. So an IPC, I'm going to call it instrument panel cluster right now, but for the rest of this lesson, I'm going to say IPC. So I want you guys to understand what that is. All right. That's your biggest vocabulary term of the day. Here's an example of an IPC. All right. This is an instrument panel cluster. You guys got to remember, back in the day, there used to be individual gauges on everything, right? You had separate, like if you look at my 72 GTO, there's a tachometer, there's a speedometer, there's a fuel level gauge, there is a coolant temperature gauge, different gauge, battery voltage gauge. There's separate gauges all through that dash. If you look at race cars, a lot of times there's separate gauges. Well, now, late model cars from, I'd say late model from the 80s forward, are all now going to use some sort of instrument panel cluster. And they call it an instrument panel cluster instead of gauges, just gauges, because the instrument panel, it's a cluster of gauges that fit into the instrument panel. So you've got in this one unit, now they manufacture one unit, and this is out of a Honda. You've got a tachometer, you've got a speedometer, you've got a fuel gauge, you've got a coolant temperature gauge, you've got your shift selector indicator, you've got your odometer, your trip meter, and all these little lights and stuff. It's hard to see. All these little lights and gadgets up here are going to tell you different things about the vehicle. Check engine lights, ABS lights, traction control lights, maintenance indicators, all kinds of information up there. So that's why they call them an instrument panel cluster now. They basically turned them into a printed circuit board and put it in a cluster. So this just one unit will plug into this main plug. And that main plug gets information from all the control modules in the car to relay the information onto the gauges and the lights. That's why they call it an instrument panel cluster. Most of these are not serviceable. If you have say a speedometer that doesn't work, well then you have to replace the whole unit. This one still has serviceable bulbs. So if you have a bulb out, you can take the little bulb out, you can buy this auto parts store, change them, and replace them, okay? Most new ones don't even have that. To be honest with you, a lot of new ones you're going to see are going all digital. So they're all digital. It just looks like an iPad or a tablet screen, and you turn it on, it all lights up. And the advantage to that is it's customizable. You can move things around. It's easy to update and program. If there's a flaw in the system, you put new software in it, it changes the gauges, makes them more accurate. So there's a lot of advantages to that. The disadvantage to instrument panel clusters in general, and especially the newer digital style ones, is they're very expensive to replace, right? So back in the day when your tachometer went bad, you could buy a new tachometer for $100, put it in, and it was fixed. Now when you have to replace this whole cluster, this basic cluster out of an early 2000s Honda might cost you $300, $400, $500, and then you have to have it programmed using a scan tool to the car. A new digital one might cost you thousands of dollars. I've seen them, I've replaced them. I worked up in the GM dealership until 2015 when I came to teach. And in Cadillac XTSs, they had all digital gauges. A lot of caddies were going to that. Sometimes we get some used cars in that had all digital gauges in the higher end cars. And sometimes they were $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to replace if they went bad. So there's the downfall to it. All right. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things like that. It is important to know these different common indicators and what the gauges are, because that's why there's a task on it for ASE. That's why there's a task on it for your program of study for your task list. All right. It's so important to know, because if a customer comes in and says, I have a funny looking light on the dash, you need to know what that funny looking light is. So I have a chart in the classroom you guys will see when you get back in the back room. It's blown up. It's a big chart of all the common ones. And I say all the common ones because it's not all of them. There are tons of them. There are manufacturer vehicle specific ones that I would not top my head if I have a chart. If you don't know what it is and it's not on our charts, you go to Pro Demand, you go to the vehicle service manual, or you go to the owner's manual. A lot of times we'll have the indicators in there to tell you what they are. All right. So when that customer comes in and says, I got a funny looking light that has a yellow light that has an exclamation point on it. I don't know what that is. What is wrong with my car? So what you're going to have to do is decipher what that is. And you're going to have to get that information relayed to the technician and relayed to the customer. Maybe it's a tire light. Maybe it's a maintenance indicator light. So you kind of need to know some general ideas. We're going to go over the basic ones today. All right. So first and foremost, I attached some things in Schoology. I attached the PowerPoint I'm going to go over with you today. I'm going to share on the screen. I apologize. I know PowerPoints aren't that interesting, but I'm going to try to keep you guys engaged, try to keep you focused here. But it's the easiest way for me to present this stuff to you virtually. I also attached some other information in there on ignition key switch positions. We usually do a whole lesson a day on ignition switch positions. I give you 5 lab sheets to go out to 5 different vehicles and identify different key positions, because some cars, they go forward, some they go back for accessory. 2 clicks forward run, 3 clicks is crank. Depends on the vehicle. So I gave you a handout on that to give you some basic explanations of that, because you need to know that to build upon the instrument panel indicators. You have to know which position to have the key in to light up the indicators. All right, so review that for me. I'm not going to bore you with it on here today. Just take a look at it, keep it saved in your OneDrive so you have it for reference. It's going to help you out down the road. I also attached the worksheet for this today. Since I can't get you in the lab, I normally get you in the lab, get you to go check indicators on cars, get you to draw pictures of them, look up what they are, things like that. Actually on the car, I can't do that. So I gave you the next best thing. I have a little activity for you to do. It's attached on there. It's the instrument panel indicators worksheet. Open that up, save it to your OneDrive, type right in it. Basically, it gives you some samples of common indicators. I want you to look up what they are, use your chart, and I want you to use CDX, and I want you to use Google. All right? I want you to just research it however you can to tell me what the light is and what it is indicating. What does it tell you, the driver of the car? All right? So that'll be your assignment. First and foremost, before we get started with this too, I want to let you guys know tomorrow we have an Act 80 day. So tomorrow we will not be here. The teachers will be here. I'll be here working, but I will not have any assignments for you tomorrow. Okay, so what I gave you today, you can work through today and get it done. I'll be checking some of the assignments tomorrow, but you will not have assignments tomorrow. So if you check in the Schoology and you see that I haven't posted anything, that's why. I'll try to remember to put a little post up to remind you guys, hey, free day today. We're closed. We're doing an Act 80 day. And then Wednesday, let me double check this before I lie to you. We should be off Wednesday. Dun, dun, dun. Let's get my calendar. Yes, Wednesday, we're off. So we have no school, and I'm sure you have no school at your sending schools too. That's Veterans Day. So remember, today you got assignments. Tomorrow, Wednesday, you do not have any new assignments. You can get this stuff completed, get caught up on anything you need to get caught up on. I will still accept late work. You guys know that. I'm not going to give you full credit for it, but if you haven't done some of the late work, I will give you late credit for it. If something needs unlocked, the test needs reopened, please just email me and let me know. All right. And then check back in on Thursday. I will have assignments for Thursday and Friday. All right. So just wanted to get that out there before I forget. Pull this up real quick. All right. Slideshow from current. Cool. So I'm going to minimize my chat box. So if I don't see it and you text into it, I apologize. I'll check it near the end as we go. All right. So instrument panel cluster basics, dashboard indicators. That's what we need to know. See if I can go here. All right. So here's a picture of a dashboard with all kinds of symbols lit up. What do all these symbols mean? They all have a meaning. They all represent some sort of a system in a car. So deciphering what they are is hard sometimes, but we're going to go over the common ones. For example, let me turn on my little laser pointer here. All right. If you look here, this little genie lamp, I call it the genie lamp. It's not a genie lamp. That's an oil indicator. All right. So that's telling you when that lights up, it's red, it's lighting up, hey, you've got an oil problem. Shut the car off now. You guys will realize the colors, not only the shapes and symbols, the pictures, but the colors represent something too. Red is usually pretty serious. Yellow is usually a warning. Green is usually just telling you, green or blue is usually just telling you something is on. All right. So if you look here, that's red. The genie lamp's red. It means that's an oil can. There's low oil in the car. Shut the car off. All right. There's all kinds of different ones. Right here, I don't know exactly what that means. I'd have to look it up for the specific vehicle you're working on. It's probably some sort of a power steering problem. All right. There's all kinds of different ones. Look at this one right here. This looks like a cheeseburger or some sort of a hot plate or a grill. I don't know what that is. So looking at that, I'm not sure. Maybe that's a heated seat indicator. Maybe that's a exhaust problem. That's probably actually an overheated catalytic converter or something. I'd have to look it up. My point is I don't know what all these mean off the top of my head either, but we're going to show you the basic ones that you need to know, and then the rest of them you can look up. You'll look here. There's a ton, right? And that's not all. Here's some more. So if you look up here, here's some more common ones. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. Fan. Picture of a car with an arrow recirculating for HVAC, for heating and air conditioning. Looks like a gas pump for the fuel. All right, this one's pretty self-explanatory. It's got water in the fuel. The battery charging system has a problem. I drove my diesel in today. I've got it back on the road and up and running. I have a glow plug problem with it. I have to change the glow plugs in it. This light comes on when the glow plug is warming up, and then when it shuts off, then I know I can start it. Right now I have a indicator on telling me I have a problem with it. The malfunction indicator light for the check engine lamp. So it looks like an engine from the side. It's supposed to be like the flywheel, the side of the engine, the fan, the air cleaner. So it's check engine lights, universal sign for that. Different lights, different windows, heating seats. There's all kinds of different indicators you'll see on a dashboard. All right, some are telling you there's a problem. Some are telling you that it's on. But the biggest things I want you to remember are MIL. Once again, we talked about acronyms. I'm going to say malfunction indicator lamp right now, and I'm probably never going to see it again. All right. MIL is malfunction indicator lamp. Remember that. A malfunction indicator lamp turns on when the onboard diagnostics, or OBD, computer system senses any malfunction within a vehicle system. So if the car senses something, the car's not running right, and it's got a misfire and it's running rough, it'll throw a malfunction indicator lamp on, or a MIL, for the check engine light. It'll throw the check engine light on. That'll tell you there's a malfunction indicator lamp on for the engine. There's a problem with it. Get it serviced, get it looked at. If it sees a problem with the ABS, it's going to throw an analog brake light on. Different things like that. So I have an example down there. Engine light indicates malfunction with the engine control computer system. Analog light indicates malfunction analog brakes, et cetera, okay? So what does all that mean? All right, what does a MIL mean? Some indicators or lights may not mean there is a problem, but they're just used as a reminder to you, the driver, or the technician, all right? So some examples of that would be a red brake light on the dash could indicate a malfunction with the hydraulic braking system, or it's a reminder that the emergency brake's still on. Either way, it's in red because it's pretty serious and pretty important. If the hydraulic brake system isn't working, well, then you probably could possibly lose brakes. That's pretty important. That's pretty significant. So it's red. The same light will light up if the parking brake is on, and it's red, and the same light to let you know, hey, there's a problem with the brakes. Dummy, you forgot to take the parking brake off. And don't take offense to that fact that I said dummy. I've done it before too. I look down and I say, oh man, the parking brake's on. I pull it off. So that's telling you it's pretty important too. We don't want you to drive down the road with the emergency brake or the parking brake on. That can cause major problems and safety issues. So it's red for that reason. But just remember, some MIL lights will definitely tell you that there's a problem, but some of them are just letting you know that something is active or turned on. I'll give you some more examples of that. So it could be a reminder to the driver. So for example, this one right here is a picture of a stick figure with a seatbelt on. So this example is a seatbelt indicator, is a reminder to the driver and passengers that their seatbelt is not on. It's red because a seatbelt's a safety issue. It's pretty important. It's the law to wear. You should always wear one, so it's red. It doesn't mean necessarily there's a problem with the seatbelt system. It's just saying, hey, man, you forgot to put the seatbelt on. Click your seatbelt on. It could also indicate that there's a problem with the seatbelt, but more than likely it's just a reminder to the driver. So do all these mean the same thing? All right. I want you to think about that for a second. Do all these mean the same thing? They all look a little different, but yes, they all mean the same thing. So For years, we had different things. We had service engine soon lights. A lot of GMs and other vehicles said service engine soon. Some vehicles said check engine. That's how we got the check engine light. All right, came one. Then we went to more of a universal engine design. So you'll still see these on vehicles, but most modern cars you guys are gonna be working on are gonna have some form of one of these four right here. All right, so it's kind of a universal standardized symbol, a check engine light. It looks like an engine from the side. This one says check engine. This one says check engine right inside the engine. This one just says check. They may look like any of these, but the universal sign is this engine. Don't rule these out though, because you'll still see them around. So that's telling us, or the technician or the driver, hey, there's a problem with the computer controlled system of the engine. The way the engine is operating, it's sensing a problem. Could be a misfire problem, could be a mechanical problem. All right, it's telling you this vehicle has a problem, it's causing it to run different, or could cause it to put out more emissions than it is supposed to. The main thing behind this light is an indicator to you, the driver, that your car is not running properly and it's creating more emissions. That's why this check engine light is tied right to your emissions test. All right, cannot have a check engine light on or any problems with your engine computer system and pass an emissions test. It won't happen. All right, first thing you're supposed to check. So CEL, SES, check engine light is a CEL abbreviation, or lamp I have there. Some people call it a lamp or light. SES is service engine soon. They're essentially the same thing. You know, some different manufacturers use that SES indicator, a picture of an engine or a light that says check engine or service engine soon, like you just saw on that last slide. Just be aware of the different indicators. Remember that they are all a MIL, or malfunction indicator lamp, for the same engine computer system. There were just different terminologies there for years. They've all pretty much kind of gone standardized with check engine and then the picture by this point in time. You still will see some variances though, all right? ABS, or anti-lock brakes. When I first started driving, my first two cars didn't have anti-lock brakes. I had a 1969 Pontiac Tempest. It didn't even have power brakes. It had four-wheel non-powered drum brakes on it. All right, it was hard to stop. My daily driver, my second car that I bought after that to run as a kind of a beater car when I was in high school, was a 1990 Honda Accord, four-door Honda Accord. And it had power brakes, power windows. It had all these options, but it did not have anti-lock brakes. Because you got to remember, anti-lock brakes into the mid-90s and late 90s was an option on a lot of vehicles. Some vehicles only had it on the rear. Some had four-wheel. Some didn't have it at all. So ABS was still an option. So I didn't have it on those cars. Now you start getting in the late 90s, 2000s, and newer, pretty much every single car came standard with anti-lock brakes. That's a standard option you guys have now. Kind of like power windows. Try and find a car that doesn't have power windows brand new on the lot today. I don't know if you can find one. It's almost impossible. Where back in the day, every car came standard with manual windows and you had to order power as an option. So ABS is that way now too. It's standard pretty much on every vehicle. I'm not saying that you can't find a vehicle without it, but it's pretty much standard on every vehicle you're going to work on. So it's a system that keeps your brakes from completely locking up to help prevent sliding. In the old days, you had to pump the brakes. When I had my cars, my first couple of cars didn't have anti-lock. When I slammed on the brakes, the wheels would just lock up and you'd slide. Well, if you tried to steer, you just kept going straight. You couldn't steer. So you had to pump the brakes. You had to pump the brakes really fast so it would lock the brakes up, release them, lock the brakes. So it would allow you to steer the car around something or keep it from sliding off the road. ABS does this work for you. Now you just slam on the brake, hold it on the brake, and if the wheels start to lock up, you'll feel it pulse. The pedal pulses, and the tires kind of chirp and let go, chirp and let go, chirp and let go. So that way you can, it prevents you from sliding off the road into a ditch. It allows you to be able to slow down quickly and steer at the same time around something. So that's what anti-lock brakes, the basics of what it's for. All right, here's the indicator for it. Sometimes they look like this. This is the most common standard ABS light you're going to see on more modern cars. Start looking at some older cars, you'll see anti-lock like this. All right, you'll still see this on a lot of our shop cars from the 90s and into the early mid-2000s. But these are two different indicators that are common you'll see, mainly this one nowadays. That's letting you know that there's a problem with the anti-lock brake system. Not the brakes themselves, the anti-lock brakes. When this light comes on, it disables, automatically defaults, it disables the anti-lock brake system, and now you are just using traditional old school brakes where you do not have anti-lock brakes. If you hit the brakes, they'll just lock up and slide. So you want to get this fixed. If you're used to driving cars with ABS, you always want to make sure you get this fixed. So it's telling you there's a problem with that system. There's code stored in the system. You need to have it diagnosed. All right. Traction control. I always call this the burnout light. All right. No, this is not the burnout light. The traction control is a system that keeps your car's tires from slipping on slick surfaces such as snow, mud, dirt, gravel, any kind of loose surface, wet grass, things like that. So the indicator can mean there's a problem with the system, or this is another one that can just be telling the driver of the vehicle that it's active. So it can be a problem with the system or a reminder that the driver, the system maybe is disabled or it's engaged. So you'll notice a lot of cars, especially with wintertime coming up, if you have some snow, some slick surfaces, and all of a sudden the car starts to spin a little bit, sometimes you'll see that light flash on the dash. It's letting you know it's engaged. If you're driving down the road and all of a sudden this light comes on for no apparent reason, that's telling you that there's a problem with the system. If you push the button to turn it off because you don't want to use traction control and you want it turned off, that light will come on the dash and that's letting you know it's turned off. So it can mean a few different things. Here's another example right here. This one right here is a picture of a tire cutaway. It's like if you're looking at the front of a tire and you cut it in half, here's the sidewalls bulging out, here's where the beads are, here's a tread, and it says TC for traction control and has an X. That's telling you traction control is off. Either you turned it off or there's a problem with the system and the system turned it off automatically, disabled it because there's a problem, all right? So there's some different indicators. This is the more common one you're gonna see nowadays. So notice it's yellow too, and ABS was yellow. It's yellow because yes, they are important, but you can still drive the car safely and functionally without these if there's a problem. So they're yellow, all right? It's not like the hydraulic brake indicator, if there's maybe a brake fluid leak or something. That is a safety concern. You can be killed if your brakes are not working correctly. So it's red. These are yellow because they are, hey man, there's a problem, get it to the shop as soon as possible, but it's still safe to drive home. Supplemental inflatable restraint systems. That's a fancy word for what you guys all know, airbags, right? So SIR is what I'm going to call it now because I'm a technician and I like acronyms. So this indicator can mean that there's a problem with the system, or it can tell the driver that a passenger airbag system is not turned on. Nowadays, guys, you have passenger airbag systems. You have passenger presence systems where it senses the weight in the seat. So that way, if there's nobody in the seat, it doesn't set that airbag off if you're in a crash. Also, if you didn't follow the rules and the laws and you put somebody in that seat, like a child that shouldn't be in that seat, if they don't weigh over certain pounds, it tends to turn the airbag system off so it won't hurt them. All right. That's why you should always have kids in the backseat of cars nowadays with airbag systems. When I was a kid, I got to a certain age, I was up front a lot, but the rules and laws were different then and people just didn't know any better. When I was riding around in an 86 Pontiac station wagon that had no airbags in it, when I sat in the front seat a lot, once I got to a certain age, there's no airbags in that car. All right. So now they sit in the back for that reason. This indicator could tell you a couple different things, that it's on, that it's not working right, things like that. So example, a regular cab pickup trucks usually have the option to turn off the passenger airbag just in case you have a child in the car seat. Cars, extended cabs, and crew cab trucks, and SUVs, sedans, things like that, have back seats you can put them in. They don't have that option to turn the passenger airbag seat off, usually manually. If you look at our regular cab GMC truck here, it has a spot in the dash where you can turn the airbag off. If you look at even my extended cab GMC Sonoma or a little S10 pickup that I have, it has a spot in the dash where you take the ignition key, stick it in, and you turn it, and it turns the passenger airbag off. Reason being is those don't have back seats that you can put a car seat in. So if you have a kid and you have one of those trucks, you have no choice but to put them in the front seat. This allows you to turn the airbag off so they don't get hurt. That light can tell you that it's off, all right? It can also tell you there's a problem. If the airbag system is not working, it detects a problem, these lights can come on. Older lights, older cars, you'll see it just says airbag a lot. A lot of them nowadays will say SRS or have this indicator. This is the most common airbag in here. It's a guy sitting in a seatbelt with an airbag right here in his face, all right? Or SRS. That's red because that's a safety concern. You want to get that fixed because if you're in an accident, now you don't have airbags. So that's why that's red. Note the colors. All right. So there are many more indicators. Like I said, look at all these. We just covered a few of the common ones. You need to be familiar with those common ones and start looking at some of these other ones. For example, defroster, windshield defroster, maybe rear window defroster, automatic wipers are on, trunk is ajar. That's not a burnout button. That's or burnout light. That's traction control. You know, glow plugs on a diesel. Maybe this has a different type of a sport mode or traction mode for snow. I'm not sure. Windshield washer fluid low. High beams on, low pressure light, low pressure or low tire pressure light. Every car from 2008 and newer is mandated by the government. They have to have a tire pressure monitoring system. So you'll see this light a lot, especially this time of year when the temperature goes up and down and up and down. When it starts getting cold, people are going to come in and say their tire pressures are low because temperature drops, so does the pressure in their tires. Battery, parking brake. There's all kinds of different symbols. All right, so we want to make sure we know the common ones, but also know that you need to look those up. So back to IPC. What does IPC mean? Remember this, instrument panel cluster. It contains a speedometer, tachometer, fuel, battery, engine temperature, and various other gauges. Every car can be a little different, but they always contain a speedometer, tachometer, fuel, battery, engine temperature, and usually the odometer too. But there could be other gauges along with that, such as maybe there's in a diesel exhaust fluid level gauge, a transmission temperature gauge, different things like that. Not all vehicles look the same. Not all of them use the same gauges. Some have their own. Some look different. I've had S10s. I had 3 or 4 different S10s in my life, and a couple of those S10s all had different gauges, even though they were the same truck. Just depended on the options that were in it. I had a stick shift 4-cylinder base model S10 regular cab for a while, and it was a stick shift but didn't have a tachometer. Well, you would think with a stick shift it would. It didn't. They didn't order that option. But my automatic extended cab has a tachometer. So just different options, all right? IPC also has warning light indicators for anything from seat belts to check engine to brakes, anything like that. It usually contains the odometer for the mileage. It tells you how many miles on the car, and a driver information center or a DIC on newer cars. So here's an example of an IPC. This to me looks probably like a 90s, early 2000s car. It's got all the gauges in here. It has some separate little screens with lights that light up. And it has a little driver information center down here. This driver information center is telling you the odometer, the mileage, the temperature outside, things like that. Now we're looking at digital IPCs. You're going to see gauges like this in cars. My sister-in-law just got a new Mercedes SUV, and the dash on it's like this wide. It's all kinds of gauges and different things. The radio's combined into it. It's pretty wild. So this has all the gauges are digital. Fuel gauge digital, or this looks like a charge. This must be an electric vehicle, so it needs to plug it in. Your power, and then right here is your driver information center. It tells you the battery level is low. It's in park, how many miles are on it. There's a lot of driver information stuff right here. Like my wife's Tahoe, you can pull the radio up there and see all the radio, the songs that are playing, if it's on XM, Apple CarPlay, the navigation, things like that. So that's the driver information center, or DIC.